The massive Terran ship emerged from the clouds, its dark purple hull reflecting sunlight as it hovered above Seoul's skyline. People stood frozen in streets, on rooftops, and behind windows, necks craned upward at the impossible sight. News. Drones buzzed around the vessel, capturing footage that would soon break viewing records worldwide. "This changes everything," whispered President Kang to his advisors as they watched the screens in the emergency bunker. The room smelled of coffee and fear. 3 days later, the Terran ambassador stepped from a smaller craft onto Earth soil. Tall and muscular, with iridescent blue skin that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight, the alien wore ornate armor decorated with symbols that human linguists would spend months trying to decipher. Behind him stood 4 guards carrying weapons that hummed with strange energy. "They look like they're ready for a fight, not a conversation," muttered Defense Secretary Park. The world watched as diplomat June bowed respectfully. "On behalf of Earth, we welcome you and hope for peaceful relations between our worlds." The translator device barely finished speaking when the Terran ambassador laughed, a harsh, grating sound that needed no translation. "Your planet belongs to King Mach now. You will submit or be removed." Footage of this exchange spread across the globe in minutes. Panic followed in some regions while others prepared for resistance. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session that lasted 36 hours. "They've conquered 7 other worlds," Intelligence Director Yoon explained, showing holographic images of devastated planets. The Terrans see warfare as their divine purpose. Negotiation isn't in their vocabulary. June didn't give up. For 2 weeks he tried everything, offering trade agreements, cultural exchanges, even limited resource rights. Each proposal was met with the same response: complete surrender or complete destruction. The final meeting took place aboard the Terran command ship. Earth sent its best team, June, 2 military advisors, and a xenobiologist. They were escorted through corridors lined with what appeared to be trophies from conquered civilizations. "These are warnings," whispered xenobiologist Lee. "They're showing us our future." King Mach sat on a floating throne made of metal that seemed alive, constantly shifting and reforming. Standing nearly 9 feet tall with deeper blue skin than his warriors and eyes that glowed amber, he wore a crown of what looked disturbingly like bones. "Your persistence amuses me," King Mach said through the translator. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Most species beg for mercy by now." June stood straight, looking directly at the alien king. "Humans don't beg. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own wars. We've rebuilt from ashes many times. We prefer peace, but we aren't afraid of you." The throne room went silent. Then King Mach laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Brave words from such a fragile creature. I've studied your species. Soft skin. No natural weapons. Physically inferior in every way." He stood and towered over the human delegation. "I give you 1 Earth rotation to surrender. After that, we begin cleansing your cities one by one. Your weakness offends the natural order." As they were escorted out, June noticed something troubling. Displays showing detailed scans of Earth's defense systems, orbital platforms, and military bases. The Terran had been studying them thoroughly. Back on Earth, the Council received June's report in grim silence. "They've already decided," June concluded. "War was always their plan. The meetings were just to assess our resolve." President Kang looked around the table at the representatives from every continent. "Then we give them a war they don't expect. Humanity has faced extinction before. We're still here." That night, as the ultimatum's deadline approached, people across Earth gathered with loved ones. Some prayed, others prepared. In military bases around the world, soldiers said goodbye to families while engineers rushed to finish adapting technologies reversed engineered from previous alien encounters decades earlier. At exactly midnight UTC, every communication screen on Earth flickered to life simultaneously. King Mach's face filled the displays, his amber eyes seeming to look into each viewer's soul. "Your time has ended," he announced without preamble. "The Terran Empire claims this world. Resistance means extinction." President Kang's response was, broadcast immediately after, Standing in front of the old United Nations building, his voice remained steady, despite the weight of history pressing down. "We decline your offer," he said simply. "Humanity chooses freedom." Within hours, the first Terran warships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, defense platforms activated, their weapons looking pitifully small against the alien armada. On the ground, people watched the skies with a mixture of terror and determination. In his command center deep beneath the mountains, General Jin addressed his international force. "They expect us to fight like we always have, with conventional weapons and traditional tactics. They've studied our wars." He smiled grimly. "But they've never fought humans before." As the first explosions lit up the night sky, humanity prepared to show the Terran exactly what they'd underestimated. The war had begun, but it wouldn't end the way King Mach expected. The first Terran assault came at dawn. Their ships descended through clouds over the Atlantic defense grid like massive predatory birds, weapon ports glowing with alien energy. Military analysts had predicted they would target major cities first: New York, London, Tokyo. But instead, the aliens attacked Earth's orbital defense satellites. "Smart move," muttered Commander Han as she watched the tactical display inside Moonbase Alpha. The room hummed with tension as technicians worked frantically at control stations. "They're trying to blind us first, but humanity had anticipated this." For years after the first confirmed existence of intelligent alien life, Earth's nations had secretly constructed backup systems. As the primary defense grid went dark, Commander Han gave the order that activated Plan Hydra. "Let's show them what happens when you corner humans," she said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Thousands of tiny stealth satellites, previously dormant and invisible to Terran scans, suddenly powered up. The aliens hesitated, clearly surprised by the unexpected resistance. Down on Earth, citizens watched the space battle through special broadcast channels. In shelters and bunkers, people huddled around screens, cheering each time a human missile found its mark. Children who days ago had been in school now helped distribute supplies and comfort the elderly. "Will we win?" a young boy asked his grandfather in a soul shelter. The old man, who had survived wars decades before, squeezed his grandson's shoulder. "We always find a way." Above Australia, Space Commander Day's fighter squadron executed the first direct counterattack. 30 small, nimble craft deployed from hidden hangars in the outback, reaching orbit through stealth corridors. "Remember your training," Day told her pilots through the comm. "They're bigger, but we're faster. Use that." The human fighters darted between massive Terran warships like mosquitoes around elephants. The aliens' weapons were devastating but designed to hit large targets. Day's squadron exploited this weakness, using Earth's asteroid defense network as cover to strike and retreat before the Terran could respond. "They fight without honor," growled the Terran fleet commander to King Mach during their secure transmission. "They won't engage directly." King Mach's amber eyes narrowed. "Crush them anyway. They're just delaying their extinction." But the delay was exactly what Earth needed. In laboratories across the planet, scientists worked frantically to understand Terran technology from the debris of damaged alien ships. Each fragment revealed new insights. Their hull material responds to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Dr. Yoon announced 3 days into the invasion, her voice hoarse from days without proper sleep. She held up a piece of the iridescent metal that seemed to shift colors under the lab lights. "We can use this." By the end of the first week, the Terran had established orbit over major cities, but found themselves unable to begin the ground invasion. Every time they positioned for descent, hidden human defenses would activate, forcing them to retreat and regroup. The Terran commander slammed his fist against his ship's control panel. "How are they anticipating our every move?" The answer was simple but brilliant. Decades of satellite surveillance and space junk had given Earth perfect radar coverage. Nothing could move in near-Earth orbit without dozens of sensors tracking it. The Terran, accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority, had never needed to develop stealth capabilities. "We've been watching the skies for centuries," General Jin explained to world leaders during an emergency meeting. "First for each other's missiles, then for asteroids. We built the most comprehensive detection system in our solar system. In orbit above the Himalayan region, the Terran attempted a new strategy, a massive deployment of smaller landing craft. They launched hundreds simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. Commander Han watched the swarm approach on her tactical display. "Right on schedule," she said, nodding to her weapons officer. The trap was sprung. The seemingly undefended mountain range suddenly bristled with hidden defensive positions. Ancient bunkers built during Earth's Cold Wars, repurposed and upgraded, housed energy weapons reverse-engineered from previous alien encounters. "Fire," ordered Han. The sky over the Himalayas lit up with intersecting energy beams. Terran ships fell like rain, crashing into uninhabited valleys where recovery teams were already waiting to salvage the technology. On the Terran command ship, King Mach received the reports with growing rage. "These humans," he snarled, "were supposed to be primitive, weak. How are they resisting our might?" His science advisor spoke cautiously. "My king, we may have underestimated them. Our intelligence suggested they spend most of their resources fighting each other. But it seems those conflicts prepared them for external threats. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Day's fighters had established a hidden base. Using the countless space rocks as cover, they would emerge to attack Terran supply ships, then vanish back into the field before the aliens could respond. They don't understand three-dimensional thinking," Day told her pilots during a briefing. "They approach space like it's just another battlefield, but we've been dreaming about this since we first looked at the stars." The war settled into a stalemate. The Terran couldn't advance, but Earth couldn't drive them away completely. Both sides adapted daily, learning from each encounter, developing new tactics and countermeasures. Then came the game changer. Dr. Yoon's team discovered the frequency that disrupted Terran communications. For just 20 minutes, the aliens were completely disoriented, their ships moving erratically without central command. "Now," ordered Special Operations Director Sue over the secure channel. "Execute Operation Kingfisher." Captain Tay and his team had trained for this moment since the war began. Their mission was simple but nearly impossible: infiltrate the Terran command ship and capture King Mach himself. The trap was set. The hunters would become the hunted. Captain Tay studied the holographic projection of the Terran command ship floating above the briefing table. 2 months of warfare had led to this moment. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional cough from one of the 6 team members selected for the mission. "Their security patterns change every 12 hours, Tay explained, pointing to the rotating shields visualized in red. But Dr. Yoon found something interesting. During their ritual rest cycle, there's a 3-minute window when they recalibrate their internal systems. Lieutenant Jin, the team's tech specialist, zoomed in on a section near the ship's central core. "This access point here, it's meant for emergency repairs, but we can use it to slip inside." The plan was audacious, possibly suicidal. No human had ever boarded a Terran vessel and lived to tell about it. But intelligence gathered from downed ships and intercepted communications had given them just enough information to attempt the impossible. "Remember," Director Sue said from the doorway, her face showing the strain of sleepless nights, "this isn't just about capturing their king. We need to know how they think, how they fight. This could end the war." The team spent the next 24 hours memorizing every detail of the mission. They studied Terran biology, practiced with weapons designed specifically to incapacitate rather than kill, and rehearsed their movements until they could do them blindfolded. Dr. Yoon presented them with the mission's most crucial technology: stealth suits developed by combining human ingenuity with recovered alien materials. "These bend light around you," she explained, helping Tay into the skin-tight material that felt strangely warm to the touch. "And they mask your heat signature. You'll be nearly invisible to Terran sensors. But they're not perfect. Fast movements can cause distortion." The night before launch, Tay couldn't sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters, looking up at the stars where somewhere the Terran command ship orbited. He thought about his home in the countryside, the small garden his parents tended, the neighborhood children who now played war games featuring humans versus the blue aliens. Everything had changed in just a few months. His door slid open and Lieutenant Jin entered carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. "Thought you might be awake too," Jin said, offering a cup. They stood in silence, sipping the bitter liquid. "Do you think they expected this when they came here?" Jin finally asked. "To find us so stubborn?" Tay smiled slightly. "That's what they missed in their intelligence. Humans don't know when to give up." Launch day arrived with a tension that spread throughout the hidden mountain base. The special craft that would take them to their target was unlike any conventional vessel, small, pitch black with no visible engines or windows. Designed specifically for this mission, it used a combination of Earth technology and reverse-engineered Terran systems. The team suited up in silence, each lost in private thoughts. Medic Cho checked everyone's vital monitors one last time. Weapons. Specialist Park distributed the specially designed stun weapons. Navigator Sun reviewed the approach vector again, looking for any potential flaws. "Remember," Tay said as they prepared to board, "we move as one unit. No heroes, no sacrifices. We all come back." The launch was timed to coincide with a major distraction. On the far side of Earth, Commander Day's fighters executed a bold attack on the Terran supply line, drawing attention and resources away from the command ship. The small craft slipped through Earth's atmosphere like a ghost, its revolutionary propulsion system leaving no heat trail to track. Inside, the team sat strapped into acceleration couches, the only sound their measured breathing through the suit filters. "Approaching target," Sun announced quietly after 3 hours of silent flight. "Entering their detection range in 5 minutes." On the main screen, the massive Terran command ship grew larger. Up close, it was even more intimidating. A city-sized fortress of shifting metal and pulsing energy fields. Their intelligence had identified only one weakness in its perfect defense. Synchronizing with their recalibration cycle, Jin reported, fingers dancing over his control panel. "Window opens in 30 seconds. Time seemed to slow. Tay could hear his own heartbeat, loud in the confines of his helmet. Everything depended on precise timing and the assumption that the Terran wouldn't have changed their patterns. "Now," Jin whispered. The small craft accelerated toward what appeared to be solid hull. For a terrifying moment, it seemed their intelligence was wrong. Then they passed through, the hull material rippling around them like liquid before reforming behind them. They had penetrated the outer defense. Now the real challenge began. The team moved through the organic-looking corridors of the alien vessel like shadows. Their practice paid off as they avoided patrol routes and sensor clusters with practiced precision. The ship's interior was hot and humid, designed for Terran biology, and smelled faintly of ozone and something like cinnamon. "Life signs ahead," whispered Cho, checking the scanner built into her wrist. 2 guards outside what should be the royal chamber. They had studied Terran ritual cycles extensively. At this precise moment, King Mok would be performing the sacred war meditation, a time when he would be most vulnerable and separated from his usual contingent of guards. Tay signaled silently. Park and Lieutenant Jin moved forward, their movements slow and deliberate to avoid detection. The guards never saw what hit them, specially designed darts delivering a sedative tailored to Terran physiology. The chamber door was inscribed with symbols that pulsed with soft light. Jin attached a small device to the control panel, and the door slid open soundlessly. Inside, King Mok knelt alone on a platform surrounded by floating lights. His massive blue form was draped in ceremonial armor, his eyes closed in deep meditation. He didn't immediately notice the slight distortion in the air as the human team entered. Tay moved first, signaling the others to surround the platform. Each step was carefully placed, every movement painfully slow to maintain their stealth field integrity. The plan called for simultaneous firing of the stun weapons from multiple angles. No Terran had ever been captured alive, and they couldn't risk failure. King Mok's eyes snapped open suddenly, his amber gaze sweeping the room. He had sensed something, some subtle change in the energy field around him. "Now!" Tay commanded. 6 weapons fired at once. King Mok roared, a sound so powerful it shook the chamber walls. He lunged forward faster than they'd anticipated, almost reaching Cho before the sedatives took effect. The massive alien swayed, his glowing eyes dimming, then collapsed with a thunderous impact that vibrated through the deck. "Secure him," Tay ordered, already conscious of the countdown ticking in his head. The alarm would sound soon. They worked quickly, attaching the specialized restraints designed for Terran physiology. King Mok was enormously heavy, requiring all 6 humans to move him to the transport gurney they'd brought. 3 minutes until the next guard rotation, Jin warned. The journey back through the alien vessel was a nightmare of tension. Their stealth was compromised by the massive form they transported. Twice they had to hide as patrols passed, pressed into recesses of the bizarre corridors, barely breathing. They reached their craft with seconds to spare. As they secured their royal prisoner, alarms began to wail throughout the Terran ship, a haunting, multi-toned sound that raised the hair on the back of Tay's neck. "They know," Sun said unnecessarily, already powering up the engines. The return journey was a chaotic blur of evasive maneuvers and tense silence. Behind them, the entire Terran fleet erupted into disarray as news spread that the unthinkable had happened. Their king had been taken by the very creatures they had come to conquer. 6 hours later, the small craft landed at the secure facility, built specifically to hold their prize. As King Mok was transferred to the containment chamber, still unconscious, Director Sue met the team. "You've done the impossible," she said, her eyes fixed on the alien ruler. "Now we show them exactly who they're dealing with." King Mok regained consciousness slowly, his amber eyes opening to find himself contained within transparent walls. He roared and slammed against the barrier, but it held firm, designed specifically to contain his strength. Outside his prison, human scientists observed and recorded every reaction. "I will destroy your entire species for this insult," he growled, his translated words echoing through speakers. Director Sue stood unmoved, clipboard in hand. "Your fleet is currently in disarray. Your chain of command broken. You've lost your advantage." The Terran ruler's capture had thrown their military into chaos. Ships that once moved with perfect coordination now drifted in conflicting patterns. Some attacked recklessly, while others retreated to defensive positions. Without their king, their hierarchy collapsed. Humanity's leaders gathered in an emergency session to determine what to do with their royal prisoner. The debate lasted 14 hours. "We should use him as a bargaining chip," argued one representative. "Force them to leave our solar system." "Kill him," suggested another. "Show them we won't be intimidated." President Kang listened to all arguments before speaking. "Neither approach addresses the fundamental problem. The Terran invaded because they saw us as weak, unworthy of respect." He paused, looking at the data collected from Terran cultural analysis. "We need to change how they see us." The plan that emerged was controversial. Some called it barbaric, others brilliant. It would either end the war or escalate it beyond control. 3 days after his capture, King Mok was transferred to a specialized transport vehicle. The containment chamber, a transparent cube reinforced with energy fields, was mounted on a flat platform designed to be visible from all angles. The king raged inside, his threats and curses broadcast for all to hear. "This violates every law of war," he snarled as they prepared for the first public display. Captain Jin, now assigned as the king's handler, approached the chamber. "You plan to eradicate our species. There are no laws between us." The procession began in Seoul, where the Terran had first appeared. Streets that had been empty during the initial invasion were now lined with thousands of citizens, kept at a safe distance by security barriers. They watched in silent awe as their enemy's ruler was paraded before them. News drones hovered overhead, broadcasting the event worldwide, and crucially, to the Terran fleet still orbiting Earth. Humans wanted their enemies to witness every moment. King Mok stood tall despite his captivity, refusing to show weakness. But his eyes revealed his fury and perhaps his fear. The very concept of being displayed as a trophy was anathema to Terran culture, where rulers were considered semi-divine. Your death will not be quick, he promised Captain Jin between cities. Jin remained professional, neither taunting nor showing fear. This isn't about revenge, it's about understanding. The world tour continued. After Seoul came New Toronto, its rebuilt skyline still showing scars from Terran bombing runs. The containment vehicle moved slowly down major avenues where children waved small Earth flags and adults stood in solemn witness. Some held pictures of loved ones lost in the initial attacks. In Cairo, the procession passed through ancient streets that had witnessed thousands of years of human history. The contrast between the pyramids, monuments that had endured millennia, and the alien ruler was not lost on observers. Earth had faced threats before. Civilizations rose and fell, but humanity persisted. King Mok noticed something unexpected. During the Cairo procession, not hatred in the eyes watching him, but curiosity. Even recognition. A child pointed and asked questions. An old woman pressed her hand against the barrier, studying him with the same intensity he used to study them. "Why do they not fear me?" he asked Jin during a private moment between public displays. "Because we've faced our fears for thousands of years," Jin replied. "It's what humans do." The final destination was Rio de Janeiro. The city had been largely spared from direct attacks, its famous Christ the Redeemer statue still watching over the harbor. The containment vehicle moved along the coastal road where nearly 1 million people gathered to witness the historic moment. King Mok's chamber passed the central viewing area. Something unexpected happened. The crowd fell completely silent. No cheers, no taunts, just absolute quiet. In Terran culture, silence before an enemy was the deepest form of acknowledgement, a recognition of their power. President Kang approached the chamber alone and unarmed. Security teams watched nervously as he stood before the captured king. "This ends today," he said, his voice carried by speakers to the crowd and broadcast to the ships above. "Not with your death, but with understanding. You came to eradicate us because you thought us weak. Now you know differently." He pressed a control and a screen within Mok's chamber activated, showing live footage from orbit. The Terran fleet was surrounded by a previously hidden array of Earth defense platforms, thousands of weapons locked on their positions. "We could destroy your entire fleet," Kang continued. "Instead, we offer peace. Real peace, between equals." King Mok stared at the display, then at the silent crowd stretching to the horizon. For the first time since his capture, his posture changed, the rigid stance of rage softening into something like contemplation. "You parade me through your streets like a conquered beast," he said, "yet offer peace? This makes no sense." An elderly professor had been brought to translate Terran cultural concepts. She spoke quietly to Kang, who nodded before responding. "We don't seek to humiliate you. We seek to be seen, to be acknowledged as worthy of existence." Something shifted in King Mok's expression, the faintest recognition of a concept previously foreign to him. Throughout the war, he had seen humans as vermin to be exterminated. The parade had forced him to see them as beings capable of capturing him, yes, but also capable of choosing not to destroy him. As the Rio sun set behind the mountains, casting golden light across the harbor, King Mok made a gesture that the cultural experts immediately recognized, the Terran acknowledgement of a worthy adversary. "Perhaps," he said, his voice quieter now, "there is much our species do not understand about each other." That evening, as the containment vehicle was prepared for transport to the neutral site selected for peace negotiations, Captain Jin found himself alone with the alien ruler. "Your parade achieved its purpose," King Mok said. "But not in the way you expected." Jin looked at him questioningly. "You showed me not just your strength," the king continued, "but something we Terran have forgotten. The power of restraint, of choosing not to destroy when you have the ability to do so." The next morning, as diplomats gathered in communication, channels opened between species, humanity held its breath. The parade had ended, but its true impact was just beginning. The peace talks began on neutral ground, an orbiting station hastily constructed between Earth and lunar space. Its circular chamber featured a massive viewport, showing both worlds hanging against the star-speckled blackness. Human and Terran representatives sat facing each other across a table made from materials contributed by both species. Earth, wood polished to a high shine, and Terran metal that subtly changed colors with the shifting light. King Mok entered without restraints, flanked by his advisors who had arrived under temporary safe passage. The Terran delegation moved with stiff formality, their posture showing lingering outrage at their leader's treatment. Humans watched nervously, many fingering concealed weapons despite the peace protocol. Ambassador Yoon rose to greet them, her simple white diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the ornate armor of the Terran. At 72, she had spent decades negotiating Earth's most difficult treaties. This would be her final and most important work. "Welcome," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Today, we begin to build understanding where before there was only conflict." The first 3 days of talks almost collapsed hourly. Terran negotiators demanded reparations for their king's humiliation. Humans countered with evidence of civilian deaths during the initial invasion. Both sides threatened to walk away repeatedly. King Mok remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout, observing the proceedings with those unsettling amber eyes. When he finally spoke on the 4th day, his words surprised everyone. "I have walked your world," he said, silencing the chamber instantly. "Not as I intended, as conqueror, but as captive. And in that journey, I witnessed something the Terran have forgotten." He stood, towering over the human delegates. "Your species has no natural armor, no claws, no venom. You are physically inferior in every measurable way." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Yet you resist, you adapt, you persist." One of his generals hissed in disapproval, but King Mok silenced him with a gesture. "The parade you designed to shame me instead educated me. I saw your cities, built, destroyed by your own wars, then rebuilt stronger. I saw your children, who should have cowered but instead showed curiosity. I saw your elders, who carried memories of other conflicts yet still believed in peace." Ambassador Yoon leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, King Mok?" "That perhaps conquest is not the only path to greatness. That perhaps—" He seemed to struggle with the concept. "Different forms of strength exist?" The human delegation exchanged glances. This was unexpected. Psychological warfare had worked in ways they never anticipated. "The Terran Empire spans 12 star systems," King Mok continued. "In each we found species that either submitted or perished. None showed your particular resolve. In the days that followed, negotiations transformed. Rather than discussing terms of surrender, they began exploring possibilities for cooperation. Terran scientists, initially reluctant, found themselves engaged in fascinating exchanges with human counterparts. Cultural attachés from Earth were permitted aboard Terran vessels to learn their customs and history. Not everyone embraced the change. Hardliners on both sides viewed compromise as weakness. A group of Terran officers attempted a coup against King Mok, declaring him contaminated by human thinking. It failed when the king personally defeated his challengers in ritual combat, reinforcing his right to lead while simultaneously introducing new ideas. On Earth, protests erupted in regions most damaged by the war. "Justice before peace" became their rallying cry. President Kang addressed these concerns directly, traveling to affected areas. "I've lost family too," he told a crowd in a rebuilt district of New Toronto. "My brother died in the first attacks, but this treaty offers something more valuable than revenge, a future where such losses never happen again." 6 weeks after negotiations began, the Earth-Terran Accord was signed. The document, written in both human languages and Terran script, established boundaries, trade agreements, and cultural exchange protocols. Most importantly, it recognized both species as sovereign equals, a phrase King Mok had insisted upon, unprecedented in Terran diplomatic history. The signing ceremony was broadcast across Earth and to all Terran worlds. As King Mok pressed his palm to the document, the Terran equivalent of a signature, He spoke words that would be studied by historians for generations. The humans taught us that true strength lies not in conquest alone, but in the wisdom to recognize strength in its many forms. Today we acknowledge them as worthy beings, not subjects, not enemies, but equals. 3 years passed. The relationship between species evolved from cautious tolerance to genuine cooperation. Terran engineering combined with human creativity produced advances neither could have achieved alone. Joint scientific missions explored the outer solar system. Cultural exchanges became popular on both worlds. On the anniversary of the King's capture, a different kind of procession took place. King Mok returned to Earth not as prisoner, but as honored guest. The same route that had once displayed him as a trophy now welcomed him as an ally. In Seoul's newly constructed Peace Plaza, King Mok stood beside President Kang as they unveiled a monument. 2 hands, 1 human, and 1 Terran, reaching toward each other across a divide that narrowed but never quite closed, symbolizing the ongoing work of understanding. 5 years ago I came to erase your species from existence, King Mok addressed the crowd. Today, I come to thank you for teaching the Terran our greatest lesson, that true power lies not in destruction but in adaptation, not in conquest but in connection. After the ceremony, King Mok requested a private meeting with Captain Jin, who had overseen his containment during the parade years before. They walked through a quiet garden, an unlikely pair, the massive, blue alien ruler and the human who had once been his jailer. Do you know why I insisted on seeing you? King Mok asked. Jin shook his head. Because you treated me with dignity even when your orders were to display me as a trophy. You never gloated, never degraded. In my culture, such restraint is the mark of true strength. He stopped, looking up at Earth's sky so different from his homeworld's. When I was paraded through your streets, I expected to see monsters celebrating my downfall. Instead, I saw beings capable of mercy. It changed everything. That evening, as diplomats from a dozen worlds gathered to celebrate the growing alliance, historian Lee documented the event for future generations. In her personal notes, she wrote words that would later become famous. The war ended not when we showcased our military might, but when we forced the Terran to see our humanity. And in doing so, we discovered theirs. 10 years after the invasion, the first human delegation visited the Terran homeworld. Among them was a child who had pressed her hand against King Mok's containment chamber during the parade. Now a young diplomat, she carried with her a message of continued friendship between species who had discovered that understanding was the greatest victory of all. The monument in Seoul became known simply as the Parade Memorial. School children from both worlds visited it as part of their education, a reminder that sometimes the path to peace begins with forcing your enemy to truly see you, not as a conquest, but as an equal worthy of life among the stars.